Our next speaker, Patrick Stox, technical SEO at IBM, and he will share with us how to turn a bad situation around. We're pretty excited.
Man, tough act to follow all morning. These have been great. I've just been up here tweeting all day. So this is me. I don't have a cool intro slide, so I'm going to skip it. My wife said I needed one, though, so there you go. Here's a fun takeaway right to start with. Bing does crawl JavaScript. They actually said it at, what's his name, Fabrice from Bing said it at PubCon. No one tweeted it out, so I figured, hey, I'll give it away, yay. So they did admit publicly that they are processing JavaScript. In fact, their cache version even shows JavaScript. I went back and looked at like 7 different frameworks. They seem to have it all. So there you go. Nah, it's more fun to troll you. Yeah. So the typical enterprise environment is a mess. IBM is one of the worst. We've been online since 1985. You're talking multiple infrastructures, lots and lots of handoffs, lots of different CMS systems, and we have to make all that work. There's failures everywhere, as you can imagine. There's so much that can go wrong, literally everything that can go wrong. That's the title of my presentation. So we're going to go and look at some real-world examples, things that I've just run into over the last year or so, things you may run into the future. So hopefully you can glean maybe how to handle some of this. Duplicate international pages, this is the worst. Google basically folds them together, says we're going to take one of them, and now you've got wrong pages showing in the wrong country. Not great when you operate in 178 countries with like 60 English versions of pages at times. So we really have to rework our whole internationalization strategy. This is in progress. Some stuff is moving forward that will go into place broken that we have to clean up later. We know that. That's what happens. There's always a lot of deadlines, and you kind of do the best you can, right? This was a error page cleanup project. They were trying to basically map a couple million pages to new locations. They put a blank location tag in the HTTP header, the server response. So Google gets redirected to nowhere. Users actually ended up at the right location, but guess what? We got a lot of errors from that. A lot of lost value. So we just moved the stuff to the head. They actually tried to put it on the page with a JavaScript redirect, which is why users ended up in the right place, but Google did not, because they saw the server response first. This was a fun one with a new system that was coming online. It is online now, but we basically had some caching issues. We have multiple layers, as you can imagine, but one of these infrastructures had a shared cache, and anyway, our dev site kept switching the actual robots.txt, and we had intermittent issues where everything was disallowed. Ideally, we would separate those, but again, you do the best you can. Our temporary solution was just disable caching of text files. It's been that way for 6 months now. Hopefully, we'll fix that soon. Subdomains in the index. So once again, robots.txt, we blocked stuff. They couldn't crawl the page. They tried to put a no index on the page saying, hey, we'll take them out of the index that way. Cool, but we blocked Google from seeing it. So that doesn't work. If you can't see it, you can't see the no index. You can't respect that. Staging site index, I literally just wrote an article on this. There's so much that can go wrong, honestly, but and so many different ways that you can fix this. This one actually is still broken. Don't judge me. There's just, there's other priorities in this case. Again, we have a new infrastructure coming online, a whole new system, and there's other more important things. Who cares if a few pages from our dev site are indexed? This is a fun one. I tried to get this to happen. It's never going to happen on IBM.com, that's what I'm told. maybe one of our 8,000 other websites. But you can actually host a whole website inside your robots.txt file. Oliver Mason, actually I think Alec from DeepGraw came up with this, but there's a whole write-up there. Just a fun break. This is the only time that Ayima's redirect path tool has ever failed me. Instead of just doing a JavaScript redirect on the page, it called a file, processed the JavaScript, and then did a redirect. Users worked fine, search engines worked fine, was difficult to troubleshoot just because a plugin that I typically use failed me. It's the only time that's ever happened, though. It's a great plugin. We have, this caused one of the largest traffic drops in history on IBM.com. It was one of our more popular pages, and we basically have a system that uses like an error catching. Instead of like just redirect this, it literally looks for a certain thing, and if it's not there, then it processes the redirect. We left an index file up. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but what happened was the content was so similar that the pages kind of got folded together. So then, even though we moved it, the old one was still indexed with, instead of just as like slash with slash index.php. That was the ranking one, but it didn't have the links because we redirected the links somewhere else. So we had 2 pages live, and we kind of split the value there, and it was not pretty. Luckily, that was fixed in like 3 days. So enterprises get a bad rap. Sometimes, yes, things take a long time. I've already mentioned several that are still kind of ongoing. Other times, things get done. If there's a real problem, things can get done quickly. There's someone to fund it, and an exec looking especially. Parameterization. We have lots and lots of query parameters across all of our different systems. This particular one was one setting wrong in Search Console, and we knocked a few 100,000 pages, almost 400,000 pages out of the index. One setting. I still don't know that, so the fun part about Search Console is if you add a lower level, like if you have like a folder under the main site, the parameters don't seem to like transfer. I have asked Google like 3 times and they haven't answered me. So if anyone can answer this, do they actually count? Because they don't seem to like pass the value. I'd love to know the answer to that. They seem to respect the lower level ones, but we'll see. Links followed in redirect chains. I did a look into this because we have a lot of redirects on IBM.com. Again, we've been online since 1985, and we like to change things every 3 to 6 months. So we have a lot of hops that are 10 to 14 hops still live, and I was trying to figure out how many will Google actually follow. Like they say, try and keep it under 3. I think the standards actually say 5. I found a lot that stopped at 6. So Google seemed to actually process up to 6 for the most part. I found one as long as 10 that they seem to follow. This was looking through like several thousand of these. And how I judged whether they were followed was basically, does it have the, in Search Console, they have the via intermediate link. Was that shown for the previous iterations of the page? If that was there, I think it's counted. Whether it actually is or not, I'm not sure, but that's how I judged it. We're actually updating our system to try and take out all redirect chains. So anything that gets processed should go cached and blah, 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 end up on the main one. Should solve a lot of problems, regain a lot of value. This is almost always an issue. We have tons of issues with internationalization just because we're so big in so many different systems and things aren't necessarily consistent. Basically, this was English text when it should have been another language, and it was because we were redirecting Google based on browser language. And again, another thing that we kind of did a temporary workaround. We just said, hey, don't redirect Google, it's cloaking, but we did it because that system was going away within 3 months. making the best of a bad situation. And that's what you do in technical SEO at the enterprise level. You'll never get things exactly how you want. I mean, pick your battles. Canadian English page, SERP was in French, kind of the same issue. Google's cache was actually in French, which made it very easy to diagnose for that one. We have a lot of legacy systems, as you can imagine, stuff that's been online since the 90s. We also have very modern JavaScript frameworks. We work a lot in React. There's some stuff in Meteor. There's at least one thing in Angular, Angular 1, unfortunately. Some tips with React. Max already kind of covered this. Make sure your links are there. Make sure that your URLs are typically clean. React router is great. Almost every JavaScript framework has some kind of router that lets you clean up your links, because otherwise it can end up with some nasty stuff, nasty parameters. And really, like React, I love React personally. I think it's the future. We'll see, maybe Ember, maybe something else, something similar, though. I don't see too many websites being built in PHP probably in the next 5 years, maybe sooner. I think a lot of stuff is going to switch over. React is very cool. It literally gives you control of like everything. It's super fast because it does like a diff on the DOM, so it says, I only need to change these things rather than reload the whole thing. It's great. We finally moved IBM.com to HTTPS in April of this year. Everything under www.ibm.com, not all the subdomains and everything else. So we have maybe a 70% migration, I would say. One of the big takeaways there, content security policy. I haven't really seen anything on any of the SEO blogs about this, but it's great. You can literally fix all mixed content issues in like 5 seconds. No more mixed content issues. Literally says, if it's unsecure, upgrade it, make it secure, done. Oops, someone was taking a picture, go ahead. Referrer policy is another one. We had some issues with this one. I personally think we still have some issues, but again, this is one of those battles that'll take a while. We had a new system that set it to no referrer, which basically means if we went from one page on our site to another page, we dropped the referral value. We no longer see that. We sent something to ourselves. And in our system, like it probably wouldn't matter for Google Analytics. You're going to see that in direct traffic anyway, but we use Core Metrics or IBM Digital Analytics, and it actually separates no referrer from direct. And so that's kind of a problem if we can't see that we sent traffic to ourselves, that people went from one page on our site to another. You basically can control with referrer policy how it's sent. So if it's important to you, if you're a directory and you want to say that you sent traffic to these other websites, that's an important metric for you, right? They're paying you money to do that. But if their website's not secure, typically the referrer would be dropped. But you can kind of override that with referrer policy. It's something to check out. Again, if you're going HTTPS to HTTP, by default it's dropped. With referrer policy, you get control over it. We changed all links in one of the CMS to relative. Someone decided that was a good idea. Not me. But they did it, like it can work fine, like for images, for JavaScript, for CSS, cool. For canonicals, please God, no. This is still kind of being cleaned up as it goes because unfortunately they rolled it out to the whole system, like roll it back for the whole system. So they have to wait for all the pages to be republished, and some of them haven't been touched in years. There's no support for that CMS system anymore, big surprise. That's what happens when you have over 20 CMS systems throughout a website. It's kind of a problem. Not everything gets supported, everything gets funding to be cleaned up. This is common on a lot more systems than I'd care to admit. They decide not to throw 404 pages. They'll either redirect somewhere else on the site, or they'll show you, hey, page not found, but there's a 200 status code. Don't do that, please. Drives me crazy, makes troubleshooting difficult. If I'm running a crawl for errors and I don't see 404s, I see all 200s, I'm like, cool, they're fine. No, they are not fine. You can check hash values for that, because you'll see a lot of hash values the same, and then you're like, oh crap, they're literally all error pages. Another fun one, 418, I'm a teapot. Google did this. It was actually, I think, a practical joke or an April Fool's joke a long time ago, but technically is a standard. So this was on one of the older infrastructures, and what happened was our server didn't actually support a UTF character in the UTF-8 in the URL. So even though our CMS that was installed did, we kind of broke the system. So it's important to check every layer. I mean, it can be your CMS, your server, if you're running something like a distilled ODN or any CDNs, Cloudflare, Akamai. Things can break anywhere. And unfortunately, that's one of the problems is troubleshooting. Where is this error coming from? Some of the times we have offloads to other infrastructures, and it's who fired this? Where did this go? How did this get routed? These are challenging things because there can be multiple steps in there. Where was this cached? It can really cause a lot of problems. I think most people know this, 301s, 302s, 307s. One thing I've found out is people don't understand 307s. It's literally being fired by the browser for the most part. And there's usually a 301 or a 302 behind that. And that can really cause some issues with canonicalization. So if there's a 302 behind that 307, that's what Google sees. So if you're trying to get your new page indexed and you did a 302, it might be the original page that's still in the index. And if you do 5 redirects, it's going to cause a lot of headaches. So just figure out which one is behind there. And just a fetch in Google Search Console will generally tell you. AMP on an enterprise site. We have looked into this. We have looked into this. We have looked into this. I think it's a cool idea. It's a cool concept. It's definitely fast. I did a quick study. I say quick because I only looked at 50 sites and saw about 1 second average difference from the actual pre-render in the SERP to a direct load of an AMP page. But it perceived speed as faster because it's literally loading everything above the fold. So it looks absolutely instant. Some of them are definitely not. There are some really slow AMP sites out there. We have a lot of problems for implementing AMP. Analytics, it's our own system, but we don't support it yet. We are working on that. But that's a big blocker to adoption, as you can imagine. We also have some legal requirements for hosting our content ourselves. I don't think we're going to get any kind of document with Google that says, we're cool with you hosting this. We'll see. That's going to have to be a change in mindset and probably a 25-year-old policy, I'm sure. Can make our own cache. We don't get pre-rendering. Pre-rendering is what makes AMP so fast or appear so fast. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons that AMP is fast, but that's one of the big ones. There's a lot of scripts that we have to have on the page to meet business reasons. We would invalidate AMP's cache left and right. There's no way that's ever going to work. So either we got to get rid of some stuff or it's not going to happen. Google, if you are watching this, these are your problems with adoption. And then they could kill the pre-render spec. I mean, they could actually kill AMP. If there's one out there, feature policy, that solves a lot of the issues. So one of the big reasons you don't pre-render everything, it literally allows one page, is that some pages are bloated. You may not know this. So trying to get all that stuff in for a group of pages, all the pages say loaded on google.com would be a problem. AMP solves that, but so does something like feature. Final thoughts. You'll never fix everything. It's impossible. Keep trying. Get ahead of any problems that you can. If you know a new system is coming, a new infrastructure, whatever, like take a look at it. Try and work with the teams. Work with the teams as you go. Then they'll hopefully bring you in when they're doing something different. Automated testing, we do a ton of automated testing with server-side scripts, in-browser testing. Spot tests, we have our own like DevTools extensions looking for different things. Any way that you can do any kind of automated testing, do it, because it's going to save headaches. Middleware is also important, especially with multiple systems, multiple infrastructures. We actually have like a cross infrastructure and cross CMS solution for hreflang tags in place. Getting multiple systems to like talk to each other so that those are hard to get right. And we tried manually, as everyone does at first. That never happens. Someone's gonna put something in wrong. So getting these systems to be able to do this programmatically, to do it at scale, is super important. Like that's the only way it's really ever gonna be right. And even then, we'll see. Technical is not always the answer. There's a lot of things that I can say, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Are they as important as other things? Did we completely miss the mark on the intent? Do we have 150 words on that page about marketing jargon? Those are important too. So like, pick your battles, you'll figure out which are important. There's really a lot of time wasters out there, a lot of stuff that, yes, it's wrong in your mind, but it's not as wrong as something else, or it's okay in Google's eyes. I did a whole presentation at PubCon a couple weeks ago on hreflang tags, and basically there's a lot of like common industry knowledge that people say, and yes, they're absolutely best practices, but they're not really problems. And I've had discussions with devs and they're like, we're not doing that. There's not an error in Search Console. I'm like, well, you're not wrong. So and really like, there's a lot of interesting discussions. We had a whole thing about like trailing slash or no trailing slash because our old system had it, our new one didn't. There were a lot of misconceptions. Hey, we're looking up the file on that server. No, you're not. You're looking up a database call. So I kind of went against a lot of SEOs at IBM on that one with the dev team, and guess what? A week later, they pulled me into another project and were like, hey, can you look at this? Win. So it's really important. Just pick your battles. A lot of tips to troubleshoot. I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to go forward. I do a lot with machine learning and search too. Some stuff is really useful. We have a keyword classifier. It's based on Watson natural language classifier. Really cool. Basically, any new keywords that come into our system get grouped where they're supposed to go. It's based on taxonomy, ontology, all that. It's great. An extension to JR's WGram kind of thing. We actually did one with Doc2Vec. We got a little better accuracy. That's really cool because it's beyond the typical like phrase match or exact match understanding of content. It's more into the meaning of the content. Paul mentioned one earlier about redirects. I had a project last year. They're like, yeah, here's all these sites coming in. I think we had 1,300 on the calendar. We've done 1,200 of them. Sites being folded into IBM.com. And they're like, 16 million pages, we need to redirect all that. And I'm like, there's my year, or find a better way. So we did it, but then the problem became, we have our closest matches, and usually the answer is in the top 3. But for business reasons, it's not always the top match. It may not even be one of the top 3. So what we found is, hey, a site search with the keyword of that page probably works just as well, because you're going to be picking one of the ones there anyway. We did some other cool stuff, but JR talked about that, so, well, not all of it. We are hiring, I think, at least 2 Q1 2018. This is my pitch, I'm sorry. We do work on a lot of fun issues. We also do a lot of content optimization, that kind of thing. We try and do things to scale as best we can. Again, we are hiring. Thank you.
Questions?
With so many different CMS systems and probably not necessarily connected analytics, and what are your main, when you're going in to troubleshoot a problem, I mean, what's alerting you or triggering that? Are you watching rankings? Is it analytics drops? I mean, how are you even finding that there's an issue out of the gate?
Kind of everything. We do have alerts and stuff for that kind of thing. And again, it might just be, let's take a look at this system that no one's looked at in 4 years and see what we can do there. Or where is there an opportunity? I mean, there's no one right answer to that because there's so much going on.
So like when someone does make that change that turns everything into relative links, like how did you find that? Like, and how long did it take you to?
Just one of our crawls started to show. That took about 2 months to notice, honestly, because we didn't know it was happening. We assumed nothing on that CMS ever changed because it hadn't in years already. There was no one supporting it. I don't know how they got a ticket group. I don't know who did the work. You know, an organization of 40,000 people, I don't know who did it.
Fun.
Whatever.
Hey, Patrick, would you mind just giving a little bit more detail about why cache invalidation was a reason that you don't want to use AMP?
Why?
Cache invalidation is a reason not to use AMP.
Because so many of our stuff would invalidate the AMP cache, which means we're not going to get the pre-rendering, which means the biggest speed bonus for AMP is kind of gone.
Thank you.
Okay. Early lunch. Yay.
Thank you.